Hello all, it's the 28th of January 2018. You're here with Dan in Essex, UK. So what I'm doing today is setting my Autumn Royal Grapevine here in the Polytunnel. Now Autumn Royal, as I spoke about in a previous great video, is a variety from California, and as most of you know, we do not have a Californian climate generally here in the UK. So it's recommended if you grow that here or in similar climates to grow it in a cold greenhouse or polytunnel. By cold I mean unheated, and of course in the winter you definitely don't want it heated because grapes require a period of dormancy in order to fruit the following year. So when I say dormancy, that's the time when the leaves fall off. So that's what's required, and I've dug my hole here. I've got the vine. If you just, whoops, got the old hand there, look, that's the vine. You can see that one there. So go back to my previous video on this if you want to have a better discussion about it. I talk a little bit about about the properties of this vine. It's certainly a great grape if all goes well, and this is the hole that it's indeed going to go in. So I'm going to set it now, and we'll have a little bit of a chat as I do it. Okay, so I dug my hole just here. What grapes appreciate is they appreciate the soil loosened up a little bit, sort of a bit like if you were planting a fruit tree. So I've loosened the soil up, and grapes will thrive in poor soil, and a lot of this is simply because they put down really deep roots. They really do. They can go down meters, in fact, with regards to mature vines. So you want to make sure you loosen your soil up in order to give it a good chance of growing, because of course the roots initially will be relatively small and they will take a little bit of time. Especially here, it's quite stony. I don't quite know what was done here, but probably some sort of building site many years ago. So loosening it up, and as I stated before, grapes will generally thrive in poor soil. But what I'm doing is adding some of this. I spoke about the merits of this particular brand of compost before, and I do like it. It is Vital Earth, peat-free, organic, recycled, there you go, for the greener garden. And I like this compost because it's very, it feels heavy, it feels nutritious. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a little bit of that just in there, look, like that, around where the vine is going to go. So as you can see by the positioning, it's going in the corner of the polytunnel, and my reasoning for this is because I think this is about a 3 metre by 2 metre polytunnel, or 4 by 3, something along those lines. I forget these things. But what I want is I want to maximise space in here, because I've got the cherry minaret and I've also got a Dixie red peach tree in here as well. So not infinite amounts of space, but so there you go. Have a look at that. Now, not bad, nice root structure here. You can see, I'll just get it nice and close to the camera so you can see what we've got there. Now I'm not going to mess around too much by prizing it away. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it just there. As you can see with that, so I've got my tendrils here, one here and one here. Now probably this would suit very well for the guo method, or guot, depending on how you want to say it, G-U-Y-O-T. You might want to look that one up, but what I'm doing is I'm just going to grow it as I like to do, my own way, and it's going to go here, and it's probably going to grow up and around, if you will, so up and around the polytunnel like that. And I'm expecting this to take a few years to get going, and I'm going to leave the cane in, so I'm just working on this nicely here and planning exactly where I want it to go, and that looks about right, just so there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this in, this soil here, using my spade. I'm using a Spear & Jackson spade, and that's the one thing I like about this particular one, is the handle is large and it's soft, so you've got a nice feeling spade. I do recommend people that when they're gardening, if you're certainly going to make it, certainly if you're going to make it a career or a profession or trade or whatever, you want the best quality. But even if you're just doing your backyard gardening or your allotmenteering, you want to try and get as good quality equipment as you possibly can, because this equipment is like an investment and it will make your life easier. And for example, one good thing about this spade is the fact that it's longer than average, and I mean I'm only 5'10" tall, so I'm not particularly tall, but if you're tall, or you don't want to be bending down too much, and I think one of the best things you can do in most things in life really, is to maximise your longevity and preserve, because back trouble is an awful thing, and if you can avoid it, you really do want to avoid it. So what I'm doing is I'm firming this down nicely here, and I'm trying to get it up straight. Of course the vine, once it gets going, will do as it wishes, but I'm just making sure that it's how I want it to be, because it's going to stay here, you know. And vines, you've heard about the vine at Hampton Court, haven't you? And that vine is apparently over 400 years old, so that's quite something really if you think about it. So vines can be long-lived, so this will probably be in here, you know, until someone decides one day to rip it out. So we're going to do that just like this. Lovely. So we're going to leave that just like that. So typically when you grow grapes in a greenhouse or indeed a polytunnel, the classic option is to have the rootstock outside of the tunnel or the greenhouse. And here we go. The reasoning for that is simply for watering, because of course if you leave it outside, the rootstock, I'll show you what I mean by that for those of you who are unaware, that is the rootstock here, and that's obviously where the plant sucks up the water. So of course if it's inside, you have got to remember to water it, whereas if it's outside, once it's established, you wouldn't have to water it so much, if at all, due to the fact the roots go down a long way. But in here I've got to remember to water it. Of course I will do that. So you've got to water it if you're going to grow it inside, but also I want it in here so I can keep an eye on it and for protection as well. So the heat, it will get particularly warm. I mean, grapes benefit from, you don't want to be, obviously you can't control the weather too much, but around 16 degrees C is very good for grapes in the spring. You don't want to be much colder than that, so whilst the fruit is setting. So in this polytunnel, the temperature will start to really get up in here. It doesn't take much sun to get up in here, the temperature, not much at all indeed, and I can actually feel it. I mean, the weather around here has warmed up a lot of late, so I'm grateful for that. But what you want to do is just keep it nice, keep an eye on it, and as the fruit sets, eventually what you'll see little very small clusters, tiny flowers they are, and as they're doing that, it is recommended, particularly if you're inside growing them in a polytunnel, because bees etc won't be getting in, just give them a little shake to help the pollen, you know, move about in the flower there, and that will aid in pollination. So of course the heat in here will act as a catalyst, and probably this will grow a lot quicker than it would if it was grown, you know, outside. And grapevines, even if they're grown outside, can be incredibly vigorous. I mean, you really can get a lot of growth out of a grapevine very quickly. Once it gets established, you'll be surprised at just how quick it will grow, particularly with modern day rootstocks. So I've got to keep an eye on it in here, because probably in about 5 years it would engulf this polytunnel. So that's one thing you've got to keep an eye on. So you can see in here the polytunnel is shared by, so the Dixie Red Peach, we spoke about this before in the past, and this here, now this is an example of a catalyst of the heat. Now this is cherry variety Stella. It's a minaret, got a video on it if you are interested to learn a bit more about this variety. And from here to here you can see the growth. Now a subscriber or viewer, whatever, asked me about with regards to self-pollination of Stella, and yes, it is self-fertile and it gets massive crops, but yeah, if you can get another cherry tree that flowers at the same time, and it is outside and the bees etc will do the pollination for you, more the better. More the better, yes, absolutely. So if something is self-fertile, of course it's great, but at the same time it will be even better if you can get something else, another, you know, plant of the same species and flowering time in order to help with the pollination. So yes, that is an option. So if you've got your Stella cherry here, and over there you've got another cherry that flowers at the same time. Even if they are both or one is self-fertile, yes, that will help with regards to the pollination. So more the better. So looking down here, you can see just where we're going with this grapevine. So keep an eye on this. Keep an eye on it. And I don't know if you can just, hopefully you can read that, and you'll see Kent Muir is where I got it from, which is a Essex company, and I like to support Essex companies when possible. So what have we got here now? Cuttings, grapevine cuttings. Now this here is Lakemont seedless, of which I've spoke a lot about from another grapevine, and I do indeed have a purchased Lakemont seedless grapevine I'm going to set outside, because that is a great variety to grow outside. American variety, again from New York State I believe, and does very well outside in the UK. But so I wanted to take these cuttings, so obviously they're not on rootstocks. They were taken late last spring, so we'll see when they leaf out, or not as the case may be, just how well they do. So certainly cracking on with the grapes, and I recommend people, if you're really interested in gardening in the UK and you want prolific croppers and you want something of the exotic, because we all like a little bit of the exotic, don't we? You know, because apples and pears, as great as they are, it's nice to have something, because there is a bit of a wow factor with grapes, I think. People come round and they have a look and, wow, you're growing grapes in the UK, because there's a huge